keenly. He said, "I'm waiting. I'm waiting."
We're keeping Richard up really late. It's
That's
like
right.
11:30
That's
his
right.
time.
Let
Sorry,
me,
Richard.
Richard.
Kai's going to be peeved.
Let's see, Richard. Let's see, just with Amanda Reed.
You let him in.
Yeah. He's watching it. It's on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
Cool. Let me just do
Richard the
that.
matchmaker.
Yes, I will
Yeah,
send it to
he
you.
is awesome.
Here we go. Just send the link. Yeah. So today on the show we've got Amanda Reed, whom is the CEO of CrowdSmart, whom I just met just recently. I think about 3, 4 weeks ago in Puerto Rico.
Oh, it was
Seems so
like
long ago.
2 months ago, 3 months ago
Oh, I
almost.
must. Okay, maybe 3 months ago. God, really? Time has passed so quickly.
Time does fly. It's beach time,
That.
It's like,
Yeah, I know. I have the hat on.
I know. I need to go get my hat.
That's right. You can still wear the Hawaiian shirt.
Amanda, where's the hat? It's like, can't
So
have
we
hat.
yeah, we had really good swag. It was a good conference. It was
Awesome.
the VC3 DAO guys, and then we're just really talking about DAOs and
Right.
crypto as a whole. And yeah, we also have this kind of Techstars shared history as well with Mr. Mark Solon, actually, who I haven't
Yeah.
actually heard from in a long time.
My fellow Boise and Mark Solon.
Is
Yeah.
he still in Boise?
Well, I think he has an address here. I think last I heard, he and Pam were backpacking through the Arizona foothills or something. My
Okay,
dad was Mark's partner at Highway 12, the fund he did before Techstars. So I've known Mark for a really long time. Really
right.
talented investor. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so I knew about Highway 12. He came to London a few times. I've visited him. So when I started in New York, he came a couple times. When I was in London, he came a couple times. So I like to say I know Mark well, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean he was really, I guess, celebrating and marketing Boise, right? Even
Yeah.
before there was such a thing of
Right.
a fund in Boise, right, in Idaho.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was Mark's got a good nose for market opportunities, as evidenced by, Highway 12 had great returns. I think they had a 3x plus on their last fund, which was, great, especially for a I don't mean mid market in the sense of the asset class, but mid market in terms of the geography.
Right.
And yeah, I was in venture at the time, and I remember when I got into venture, my dad was like, "Well, there's plenty of room for nice people in that business." And then Mark recruited him into Highway 12, and I was like, "Ha!" So we were both entrepreneurs, and I crossed over to the dark side first, and then my dad followed, and then we both moved on to other things. He retired, and I decided to go be a CEO.
Right, right, right. Yeah, now you're the CEO of. Yeah, please, tell us a little bit about your background, other than the funds, and then yeah, and then what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I am, so as you said, I'm currently the CEO of CrowdSmart. I've been doing this for about 2 years. I was a senior
Mm,
advisor before that. I've known the founders for a really long time. I live in Boise, but I'm a Bay Area expat, 25 plus years in the Valley. And Marcus Gers and Tom Kaler and Kim Palasi founded CrowdSmart, and I was managing long horizon innovation for the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Singapore for
right,
GIC.
right.
And they reached out to me because I was doing innovation at the investment level. We were looking at how to use AI and other technologies to change asset management globally by the
Mm.
year 2030.
Oh wow.
And they had built CrowdSmart as an AI support platform for making better investment decisions, reducing the bias in the
Mm.
flow of capital to early stage companies,
Mm.
based on this idea of bringing groups of people together in a fund that had no GPs, and the investment decisions were made purely by the group with the help of this AI facilitation to come up with these collective assessments of these startups. And so they reached out to me because that was one of the angles we were very interested in. We were really interested in collective intelligence as part of our mandate. And as soon as they started pitching it to me, I had, at that point, I'd actually just recently left GIC, and I was doing some real estate consulting, tokenization, real estate, and funding in real estate innovation.
Mm.
And I said, if you can do this on investment decisions, I said, I really want to look at the AI in more detail. And I called up a bunch of the technologists that I counted on when I was a VC and said, hey, would you come, as I say, smell the milk?
Sure.
Right? Tell me what you think, right?
Right.
And so I called a bunch of these CIOs who I knew were way on the frontier of using AI. People like Toby Redshaw, who had been at American Express and at Aviva and others. And they said, wow, they said, really deep AI, really powerful, and that it's easy to use. And you should go join this company. You should go be the CEO of this company. We want to invest in this company. And so I just felt like the technology came along at just exactly the right time, both for the market and for me personally. And, just super excited that I got a chance to help build the business out. So we had been working, when you work for an investor the size of GIC, I used to joke that God himself would wait on hold for GIC, right? It's just, an incredibly brilliant, committed, mission-driven group of people, and managing such volumes of money. And a lot of it invested through what you call external managers.
Right.
And so that means you got a tremendous amount of connections across all of the top tier venture firms, across real estate, across fixed income. And one of the things we were looking at is how do you take that ecosystem of knowledge and distill it into a signal to help improve your investment decisions.
Right.
And it was one of our 13 mandates that we were working on, and we just could not find the software that we needed to really bring all these different opinions into a synthesized, refined signal that we could include as an input in investment decision making. And so when I got the call from the founders and I saw what the technology could do, I was like, there it is. Because I remember we looked at building it, and I remember saying, we should not build this. This is hard.
Right. Oh, this is interesting. So this CrowdSmart is really kind of a pain point that you experience at GIC.
Yes.
And just to give everyone a reference, GIC is Singapore's kind of sovereign wealth fund.
Right. Yeah. And Temasek is the other fund that people are familiar with from the Singaporeans. GIC is, I like to say, the sort of very thoughtful older brother, right? The big the public pension money of the people of Singapore. And I mean, Singapore is such a fantastic example of like the world's most successful startup, right?
690 billion AUM.
Yeah, they don't like to confirm how much AUM is under management, so that's probably a rumor amount of money.
Amanda, can you confirm? You can nod your head.
Or I need to be able to change planes in Changi when I go to Asia, so I'm gonna stand down on that. But, let's just say it's a lot of money,
right?
And it is invested, and we were looking at how to use technology to improve the returns for the people of Singapore.
Interesting.
And across all asset classes, right? And so when you're looking at that, the first thing that comes to mind is how do we use AI?
Right.
And one of the things that we realized was there was a role for AI to help bring scale to the knowledge, to the process of distilling knowledge for the benefit of a lot of different investment theses. And I mentioned one where we wanted to work through our greater ecosystem, but you also, in any organization, you just want to make better use of the knowledge that's in your organization. Right. And so, the first wave of this was a lot of enterprise search, where people were trying to save investment memos and save spreadsheets and save documents that were created. And it turns out that even the best efforts there, I'm sure my friends in enterprise search would not appreciate this, but in the case of an investment management company, if the information's even a few weeks old, really what people want to do is talk to the people who wrote the investment memo.
Of course, yes.
Read the memo.
Yes.
And so that doesn't scale very well if you've got people from your 12 global offices trying to find and discover who knows something about this. Keeping in mind, all the regulations about who can talk to who. It was much more powerful at scale to think that you could quickly, if you're working on something, ask people to weigh in, give you 20, 30 minutes of their time.
Right.
They come in, they tell you what they know, they interact with other people's ideas, they can refine a signal.
Right.
You can reduce all the bias out of that process because you're just working with other people's ideas, not with their identities. And so we had been looking for something. We couldn't find something. About another 18, I said, look, let's not build it. Somebody will build it. It's really hard for us to build. And sure enough, like 18 months later, I think I learned about the very first iterations of CrowdSmart, and I was like, there it is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So okay, so I guess not to dwell too much on kind of GIC, but I guess the standard process, VC process. Someone writes, an analyst or an associate writes the
Right.
memo, goes to the IC. The IC kind of discusses the memo, but at that point, depending on when it was written and when it's discussed, the information might be a bit old. And so I guess it's shortening that, I guess, process from there to the IC. And then I guess it's also more real time. More, I guess CrowdSmart kind of solves this issue of more real time in the sense like people can be talking about, let's say, for example, I don't know, invest in Dapper Labs, right? Talking about Dapper Labs on a
Right.
Discord, on a Slack, or whatever
Right.
mechanism or communications tool. And CrowdSmart then aggregates all that feedback into a investment memo like thing. I mean, it could always be outputted as a memo.
Right. Well, you can. So the process is a little bit sexier than that, right? So
Ah,
instead of going in and kind of just combing information out of Discord, what we can do, let's just take an example. Let's say your investment DAO. We can take VC3 as an
right.
example, right?
Yep.
Getting ready to launch on our new 2.0. We actually have a product in this market. I feel like that's the first thing I say when I talk to people about DAO tooling is we have a product that is live right now. In fact, we're about to bring out our 2.0 version. But let's just take an example. So everybody's in Discord. It's kind of chaotic, right? You're bringing ideas up. Ideas are kind of getting pushed back as more ideas get loaded every morning. As we were talking earlier, you go to sleep thinking you've got a handle on it, and you wake up and there's 4 more pages of Discord, or 10 or 20.
Right.
And so ideas kind of get lost, right? So
Right.
you can launch CrowdSmart, which is a virtual workspace for deliberations of proposals or any joint problem that you're trying to solve. It's a
Right.
virtual workspace that brings people together with AI facilitation to engage with each other's ideas in what one of our board members, John Seeley Brown, calls productive friction, right? So we can go in and look at the Discord server, go back and look at as many past entries, a year's worth, 6 months worth, and look for specific topics relevant to the proposal. It's a semantic search, the insights from whoever said something about this idea however long ago. But instead of bringing back the entire bulk of everything that's relevant, we're running an analysis that identifies the 10, 20, 50 most relevant topics out of everything that's been said. And we give the organizer a chance to add those into the conversation. Then you invite people with a link in Discord to say, we are launching a proposal about, let's say it's an investment, or if you're in a real estate DAO, it's about a property. Or it's any proposal that affects the treasury or anything that affects the DAO where you want everybody to engage. So you invite them in Discord with a /CrowdSmart engage,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Everybody who's in the Discord channel gets invited to the CrowdSmart. And there's a little content area there where if you've got a company, you can load it up like a data room. If you've got just a basic proposal, you can put the proposal in there. And we invite everybody to come in, and you are asked a series of open-ended questions.
Right.
What do you think about this company's team? Let's
Right.
take that.
Right.
And I say, well, I think the CEO's got great experience, but doesn't have enough great people around her, concerned about, or maybe they're, impassioned but inexperienced. I put in whatever I think. Based on what I have answered, our AI is looking at all the other answers that everybody has put in and selecting 7 at a time to show me that are different from what I said. So it's intentionally challenging my thinking.
Right.
And looking for me to then engage. And so I can engage with those reasons. I drag them into a stacked ranked order, or I just leave them behind. Somebody else's answer. I'm training our AI engine on what's important to me,
Right.
and how resonant that person's answers were. And it sounds like it's a long process, but this is actually, happens in minutes, right? And I go through 3 to 5 questions, put in my answers, engage with other people's answers. And in the background, our AI is building a cognitive knowledge model of the collective mind of the group.
Right. Of a collective mind of the group on that particular deal.
on that particular
Yes.
topic,
Right. Not
not in
necessarily.
general, not
That's
on
right.
all things, not
Right.
on existentialism, but on what they think about
What is the
right?
meaning of life?
The meaning of
Outside the
life.
scope of outside the scope of this
Picturesque,
particular
you know?
deal.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, so by invoking this process, you get people who log in whenever it's convenient to them over a
Mm.
period of 2, 3, or 4 days. They know that everything they say is going to be captured, that every idea, if you've got at least 20 people in a CrowdSmart, every idea is going to be seen at least 20 times
Right.
and will get a fair shot, right? Which means that their ideas don't get shoved down in Discord. It means that they're not biased because I'm an old pro or I'm a new kid or someone's got a bias about me. You know, even behind usernames, people recognize usernames. The entire process is the ideas are presented anonymously,
Right.
and that helps remove a lot of bias. So the idea is that you're getting people's fresh insights into the issue, and you're bringing up their past feedback that
Right.
anybody has put in the Discord channel, and you're throwing those ideas in the mix.
Right.
And so now I can send a member, this is actually not in our in this next release, but it's in the one right after it. You can send a member a note automatically that says, hey, Tak, you know, this comment that you made about something is really trending in CrowdSmart. You
Mm.
should come in and add more thoughts.
Right.
Or we grabbed 10 of your ideas from Discord and none of them are getting any resonance. If you
Mm.
really feel passionately about this, you should join in.
Right.
Because engagement is a universal challenge, right? It's something that is part of
Yeah.
almost every DAO. And so being able to say, come reason with us,
Right.
you know, come engage, or you don't have to be here. Your ideas are killing it,
Right.
right? Like, congrats.
Right.
You know, it's a really powerful way to bring people together.
This is really, really powerful. And you just described, I think, how your slides, right? How AI guided
Right.
co-creation works. I'd like to take the uh, screen sharing superpowers away from you. Um, do you know how to
I will
stop
stop.
that? Yes, you remind me of there's another VC called Yohei Nakajima from Untapped, and I had him on the podcast, and he's doing a lot of stuff around this. He has a small team. It's let's see, Untapped VC, and let me just kind of share that early stage, based out of Seattle,
Cool.
and there's
Familiar. I'm trying to think.
yeah, I'm happy to introduce you to him, but there's a lot of tooling that he's building, but he's only doing it himself, right? He's not doing it as a product. So definitely share with you some of the things that he's doing. And there are kind of similarities. He's not going to productize it. That's not his thing to do. But I think
Mhm.
some of the lessons learned, I think would be very kind of spot on. So for example, he has something called, he's using he's he's got so he's using AI to, for example, interact with founders, right? So he's got a specific LLM that works with certain founders that he invested in. So
Right.
when they send an email to him or WhatsApp, it will reply according to actually their conversations before, right?
Mhm.
So all the collective conversations there, and per each individual company, he's also utilizing. I'm trying to think. He's also utilizing, I think, AI to basically score certain investments. I don't think as sophisticated as you because he's not using the wisdom of the crowd.
Right.
It's just him and his kind of
Right.
his other kind of general partner, Jessica. So they're more standard kind of VC,
Yeah.
Web 2 VC team. But again, I think there might be some ideas that could contribute to CrowdSmart.
Yeah, there is so much interesting use of AI right now. Like, you know, we get asked about LLMs all the time. We actually have, I mentioned that VC3 is
Mm,
launching on our newest app. They've been working with our existing, just kind of getting ready. And one of the things we mentioned to them is we can include AI intelligent agents in the conversation.
right.
And I think this is a really interesting way to help DAOs that are working to get to critical mass. You know, you could spin up in CrowdSmart, you can spin up a lot of intelligent agents in there engaging with you.
Hmm.
to help build up a volume of ideas and reasons for people to engage with.
Hmm.
So we're able to give one sort of a bullish perspective on an investment and one sort of a bearish perspective on an investment, and they're
Right.
interacting with real people
Right.
in the CrowdSmart
Right.
itself on a deal, right?
I
It's
also
a
don't. It's also sorry. You also want to use another example. Titan Fund is actually
right,
another fund
yeah,
that actually utilizes other than
right,
VC3 DAO as well, right? And
right. Yeah,
you
the
were
Titan
sharing the
Fund.
statistics.
Yeah. So in the Titan Fund, which was an early DAO, that CrowdSmart was really designed as the AI platform for this fund. It
Mm.
was a fund of 2,500 people that
Right.
came together to invest and evaluate 150 early stage startups. And with no GP oversight, the groups came together in different smaller cohorts,
Right.
say 30 to 50 people, and used CrowdSmart. And these companies would load up their content in the data room. Everybody would come in, weigh in with their reasons, engage with, uh, help refine them into these clear signals. And if the
Mm.
score was 74, CrowdSmart creates a confidence score as well as an influence score, like a host of scores. It's like a
Mm.
Moody's score. It converts qualitative feedback into quantitative numbers, right? So we created this score system. And so if the score was over 74, the fund automatically invested 100,000. And if the score was below, they didn't get any money.
Right.
And I think I mentioned earlier, I talked to some angels who said, "Oh, I really love that deal." And even though CrowdSmart gave it a low score, the team plus CrowdSmart gave it a low score, I invested anyway. And I said, "How did
Right.
that go?" And he said, "Not very well."
Right.
Um,
Right.
so this is the wisdom of the crowds brought together with AI facilitation, made easy enough for any mere mortal to use it, right?
Right.
That's really important. My 16-year-old daughter is using it with her student social council,
Okay. Oh, right.
right? So we really designed it. I mean, part of decentralization is not just the crowd coming together, but it's
Yeah.
also about making it easy for anybody to be a facilitator, anybody to be an organizer,
Right.
so that it can sink into these local communities, these impact DAOs, places where you don't have to be an AI expert to
Right.
really leverage CrowdSmart. Right now,
Right.
it takes like a 15-minute orientation, but hopefully by midsummer we'll be able to just say, "Hey, go download it."
Yep. And where do you think talking about AI going one macro level up, like where do you think kind of AI is headed to? Where do you think the DAO space is headed to, and where do you kind of see that intersect as well
Yeah, I
beyond CrowdSmart?
I know there's been a lot of blowback, and the DAOs are, obviously struggling
Mm.
with this kind of murky regulatory environment. I think, based on the long lens that I have, having managed innovation, having the opportunity at CrowdSmart to work with a lot of communities of impact, I think there is a real groundswell of decentralization that there's no stopping.
Mm.
Right? This is a trend that is here to stay.
Mm.
Companies are trying to figure out how to make better use of their employees and give them a more authentic engagement, because
Right.
otherwise these employees are voting with their feet.
Right.
Everybody's trying to heat test, like, are you going to quit? How long, are you loyal? Are you really working at home? And, the shoe is on the other foot now in terms of the top employees feeling a lot of liquidity to move company to company.
Mm.
And when I talked to senior executives, I said, look, the way to get these people to stay is to authentically engage them in the decisions that matter. Like,
Mm.
give them agency so that they
Mm.
feel like they're contributing. Really, nothing beats the knowledge that you've contributed to something, whether you're weeding
Mm.
out other people's bad ideas or whether your idea or your feedback becomes the
Mm.
top feedback in a session. You are contributing to the
Mm.
of the right answer, right? Uh,
Mm.
so you can see companies working with, like, how do I leverage and engage all the knowledge in my
Mm.
organization? You can see communities, like we're working with the city of Cincinnati on reducing gun violence in inner
Mm.
city Cincinnati. That's, young men and women living in the life in these very disadvantaged neighborhoods, really rising up and coming together to saying, we're going to stop the cycle of violence,
Right.
working with in the same
Right.
conversation,
Right.
right? And so we were just discussing, how can we make this more DAO-like? How can we use tokens to reward the kid that comes up with the idea that resonates with everybody
Mm.
and helps turn the tide, one block, one neighborhood at a time?
Mm.
how should we look at this movement, which they've been, working to galvanize in so many cities certainly across the U.S. So
So
you see,
so you're thinking about
communities
DAO
together.
as not necessarily the legal component, but it's the incentivization side, which is kind of
Right,
using the token as an incentive,
right,
and then I guess the elevation of the knowledge, or at least
right.
it's a knowledge management platform, I guess, and all the
Yeah,
knowledge should be aggregated there.
yeah. I think that. So you asked me sort of about the trends of decentralization. I think what I wanted to convey there is you can see it in companies, you can see it in communities coming together, and you can see it in people building DAOs, right? Like you can see DAOs, which I think a lot of people initially associated with sort of the general public looked at that as like I just talked to somebody today. Oh, that's that
Yes.
crypto stuff. I'm not,
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
I was
Correct.
like, yeah, be careful here because yes, there's a lot I mean, obviously DAOs are, count on blockchain and whether it's NFTs, tokens, the you're seeing, I think it's not really articulating this very well. We're seeing a moment here, right? You can tell that there are all sorts of organizations that really should be DAOs. Like they would be well managed. There's a lot of good
I know what you
reasons
mean.
to become DAOs.
Yeah.
And you can see people building DAOs who are serious about stuff, right? This
Yeah.
isn't just about, I'm going to play with something. I mean, not to disparage everybody who, is playing with new business models or new economic models, but you can see people who care about being on the right side of regulation, who care about building something that will last, who are genuinely intent on building value in their treasury, genuinely intent on building impact in their
Yes.
community,
Yep.
genuinely intent on making real estate more accessible for more people to use as an asset to grow
Right.
value, to grow wealth, to live in. There's a lot of really well-intended momentum
Right.
in this market.
Right.
And we see it in companies, we see it in communities, and we see it in DAOs.
Right. This is a really good point. You kind of made me think like, yes, a lot of people are kind of caught up in the whole, yeah, DAO is a crypto type of thing.
Right.
And then because we've been in discussions on like how to create a new DAO, Ben and I, and I don't know if we're going to hinge everything upon this DAO word, but there are mechanisms in a DAO. I think kind of what I'm saying is that we're using mechanisms that are DAO like, but not necessarily using the DAO word.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right because there's just a lot of connotations that may or may not be right. But I think yeah, dissecting that it's the decentralization of the people, ability to scale, the incentivization in terms of the tokens,
Right.
and then I guess that's kind of where the knowledge aggregation comes in, and then that's kind of where the AI comes in, right? There's
Right.
more that the AI can surface, right? Once
Yes.
everything's in
Yeah.
a DAO structure.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk to DAO leaders, I was just on a podcast today. Andrew at Origami hosted a podcast,
Oh,
not a
right.
podcast, I'm sorry, a Twitter space.
Mm,
And it was hugely subscribed. I think there were 2.4 thousand people there. I mean,
right.
like big, right?
Right.
Talking about real estate DAOs. And one after another was talking about the challenge of bringing people together to reason together, to figure out what to do at scale. And there are all these kind of crazy proxies and different types of tokens and different types of committees. A lot of that is a workaround around the fundamental problem of how does a large group of people decide something together.
Right.
And that's what we facilitate, whether it's a community or, as you said, a DAO by any other name. If you really believe that the two essential elements to us advancing together is everybody feels engaged and feels like they have a contribution, that they have a role to play, point number one. Point number two is people have diverse points of view. And so when you cast a wider net, you actually get more accurate results because of the inclusion of diverse perspectives.
Right.
We measure the diversity of thought in every CrowdSmart that someone runs, and it's very highly correlated to accuracy. And
Okay.
so because you have a living model of every deliberation of every proposal, you can go back and back test them like a
Right.
year later, 6 months later,
I
and say,
see.
hey, what were we thinking at the time when we made this decision? This
Right.
turned out really well.
Right.
We believed this,
Right.
right? Strong signal was coming from this area. This person was really influential, or this didn't go well. What did we think at the time that convinced us that we should take this path?
Got it.
Harkening back to my days at GIC, one of the most important things about getting better at decisions is being able to back test them.
Right.
So
Right.
because you have a cognitive knowledge model, which is kind of it's a lot of words, but basically you've modeled everybody's inputs, everybody's reaction to everybody else's inputs, and everybody's influence on the conversation. And you can query that at any time, right? So it's a living record of every decision, which in the DAO world, is important because you can record some of these decisions on chain, but you also have this living record that traces every change made to it.
Right.
So from a regulatory standpoint, you can say, here's our proof of reasoning, here's involved in this specific decision.
Sure.
Here is not only how often they weighed in, but how influential they were, how concentrated the influence was.
Right.
Was it concentrated to just a few really high influencers, or was it really well distributed?
Right. Right.
And these become metrics that you can use to reassure regulators that the DAO is a functioning, engaging, we call it proof of reasoning.
Right. Well, I was thinking it's also a way, I guess, if the DAO ever decides to raise a fund, right, a proper fund as well, that would be somewhat of a kind of part of the investment memo, right? In the sense that this is how we think about decisions, this is what the results are, or how we as a collective, right, think about decisions, right? These are certain, according to your slide, right? These are certain things that were surfaced at that particular point, or points of contention.
Right. I think, if you've got an investment committee, you can reassure the rest of the DAO, look, here was the score, here was the CrowdSmart score, here's how concentrated the influence was.
Right.
Here are the top 4 recommendations that came out of it.
Right.
And so you can give them a summary of what the committee felt, whether it's 20, 30 people, 40 people, however many are on there. And then you can put that to a vote, right? Or you can say, look, it hit this threshold, it scored a 75, it's an automatic execution of that decision, right? You can choose whether you want to take a summary and put it out on Snapshot or do some other vote, or you just want to say, the crowd scored it here, let's do it.
Right. It's actually really interesting. Like, obviously, I'm going to put this on top of a traditional Web 2 fund, right? Something like a GIC.
Right.
You usually kind of your GPs are small-ish type of community, right? But this is antithetical to that, right? So to some degree, how you could layer on a traditional Web 2 fund would be basically maybe involving the portfolio companies as well.
You could, or your LPs.
Oh yeah, LPs, right?
Your LPs are always knocking on the door.
Right. To want to know, get more information. How do you guys work, right? And their knowledge is fantastic as well. So this could be a light touch way, tremendously light touch way, right, for them to engage.
Right.
Right.
Well, let's say you're a family office. So like we've been talking to a bunch of family offices, it's hard. One of the benefits of having a big partnership is you can get a lot of perspectives around a deal. One of the challenges of having a big partnership is it's hard to get everybody to agree on the deal.
Yes,
right?
100%.
And so same thing applies. Like, there are LPs who often want to co-invest on the best deals in the fund.
Right.
But they don't really have the ability to do diligence on it. So they either go hire somebody to do diligence and pay them an insane amount of money. Right. They can't trust the general partners because they're already in the deal.
Right.
So how do you, or if you're a family office and you don't have an expert in XYZ in material science, right? You think it sounds good, so this enables people to take the knowledge that is kind of floating around them.
Sure.
And bring it into sharp focus, right?
Yep. Yeah, and this would work in a traditional kind of Web 2 way, and like maybe through syndicates, right? So a bunch of family offices, right? Bunch of family offices could come together and say, look, we're not going to all know everything. Why don't we kind of join together as a network? Let's say it's 10 family offices, right? So in total, I don't know, 30, 40 people. Let's just 50 or 60 people, right? Something like that. Somewhere around 100 people. Then for every deal that we have, we can validate it.
Right. Yeah. CrowdSmart really starts with, say, 12 to 15 people, right about the point where you lose the ability to do it around the table.
Okay. Right.
Right. Where it gets hard to say, did I really hear what Amanda was trying to say? Have I really taken her idea into account? What about what Tyler had to say? I'm not sure we really heard him.
Right.
Am I being biased because so-and-so's new, they're only 25. What do they know? Or, oh my gosh, they're almost 60. What do they know?
Right.
Ways.
Yeah. It goes both ways. Right.
Yeah.
I've got stories about saying something in a boardroom when I was a VC.
And like 5 minutes later, the guy who's on the cover of Forbes magazine, perfectly, wonderfully, lovely man sitting right next to me, says exactly the same thing. The room stops. Everybody's like, oh, that's a really good idea. And I catch eyes with the founder across the table, and his eyes are just dancing because he knows I just said it.
Right.
But that unconscious bias, people, it's the unconscious bias that gets you. Conscious bias,
you can solve it. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things you mentioned with the Titan Fund was I mentioned that we used it and that the investments were made based on threshold. I didn't finish the story, which is as a group for using the wisdom of the crowd, the fund was 80% accurate in predicting follow-on funding for the deal.
Yes, you did mention that.
And it recommended investments. 40% of the investments were in women or minority founders.
Yes.
And that is off the chart. And it's not because it was hidden as to who the founders were of the company, but because by focusing people in on the questions, what do you think of the market? What do you think of the tech? What do you think of the product? Right? That was a focusing function that pulls people away from these unconscious biases. And then when they engage with each other's ideas, they're actually engaging in other diverse points of view, which are sort of knocking them out of their unconscious patterns, I guess, that are causing them to have bias. Where people, people invest in people like them.
Sure. Right. 100%. 100%. I mean, people, let's see, people hang out with people that are similar. Right. And whether they like it or not, that's just usually how it is. Right. And so I used to live in England. Right. There are private clubs. Right. And the reason why there are private clubs or in their class system is because they just want to hang out. They generally know what that person is. So it
makes you comfortable.
It makes you comfortable. Right. You don't have to do that much work to vet that particular person. So I can see that. Yeah, that's a bad thing on the investment
decision making. It's a dangerous thing.
Right.
Because if everybody comes in with the same point of view, you're usually missing something. And so I don't know if I mentioned we're working with Bain, and one of our sponsors at Bain is a woman, Marsha Blenko, who authored a book on decision making. And Bain has something I think called the Rule of Seven, which is every person over 7 in a decision reduces the decision efficiency by 10%.
Every decision over 7?
Every person added to a decision, this is in the Web 2.0 world, right? Or in the pre-CrowdSmart world, every person that you bring into a decision over 7 people reduces decision efficiency.
Interesting.
And when I reached out to her about CrowdSmart, she said, I reached out to her cold on LinkedIn.
Right.
She said, I don't usually respond, but this is the first technology I've seen that blows up the Rule of 7.
Yes.
And the reason it does is because if you're able to cast a wider net, the reason people don't engage more people in their decisions is not because typically they don't want to, but because it just doesn't scale. It's hard.
It is hard. Right.
When you cast a wider net in a CrowdSmart, if I invite you and you only have one great idea and everything else is kind of dreck, that one great idea will influence the conversation, and all of the ideas that are not relevant just kind of sink to the bottom of the tank. So there's no tax, there's no penalty inviting a really broad group of people.
Right.
And in the DAO world, that's incredibly powerful, right? Because the benefit of everybody's diverse points of view, and you get actually a better signal out the end.
Right.
Instead of a slower process, instead of a cumbersome, I can't make sense of this. Like, you couldn't have 1,000 people all fill out a form and try to figure out whose idea you should put on top.
So I have 2 points that I want to kind of interject. So one is I used to be in the military, right? And so I never heard of this rule, but it makes sense. And for example, like I was never really high up, but then I think even in small group decision making, you would really try to restrict the number of decision makers.
Right.
Not because you want it to be like, whether it's like need to know or whatever it may be, it's the efficiency basically that you want to solve for. And you want to be able to make decisions quickly, and so you keep that circle small, and then you pass it on to execution, right? Oftentimes what you may do is like have a organizing committee, right, where a planning committee where I think all this feedback is coming together. But when you're making decisions on the fly, and when you're making decisions on the battlefield, you try to restrict it small just because you want that efficiency. And another point about like my schools, there's the headmaster's going away, so we're trying to figure out this gift, and I'm kind of leading this charge, and I'm not looking
I was
forward
going
to
to say, are you
engaging.
still in school?
Yeah. I
You're on the
wish.
gift committee?
Yeah. I need to start this gift committee, but unfortunately there'll be like 5,000 parents, and I'm not
So go
quite
ahead and
looking.
invite them. I'll give you
Yeah,
credit.
yeah.
Seriously.
Maybe might be the right thing to do, because I'm not looking forward to like
Exactly. Yeah. Well,
organizing. What should we give Dr. Lister?
yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
it'll
No.
span, from something to something else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know. Believe me. I mean, we had this debate. Do we want to be used for kind of silly things? And I'm like, I don't care what people decide on smart, right? If
Right.
it's about what color flowers should we put in front of City Hall, bring it, right?
Right.
Because everybody's decisions are important to them. This is a decision that you have to coordinate. It's a pain in the butt. If you could make it easier, you would.
It's because I was like, oh, if I just decided on my own, I'm just gonna give him like a decanter with his initials, right? But then now it's like, then if we do it, we're not inviting some of the other parents, and they're like, who is this guy? Like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
trying
totally.
to monopolize, and I'm not trying to monopolize.
I don't know if I've mentioned, but we can set CrowdSmart up for you in 15 minutes. So all you need are their email addresses, or if they're in a Discord server, we can drop an invite into Discord.
Even,
No
even,
problem.
even might be better. These are parents at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay, so we'll use email. So just, I'll set up a CrowdSmart instance for you. Give me the name of the school.
Right.
Give you like a 15-minute orientation. You give us a comma delimited file of their emails, and you'll be up and running. All you have to do is ask one question. You can also
Right.
use CrowdSmart on Zoom calls, which is cool.
That might be good, actually. Yeah, it might be good.
Page after page after page.
That's
of
right.
Zoom call. You can just pop up a CrowdSmart question and figure out what everybody thinks. And
That would be good. That would be good. That way, like, yeah. But that turns the head on traditional kind of decision making, right? So you had organizing committees where a breakaway group, to talk about certain kind of subtasks, right?
Right.
And make progress there. Now you don't necessarily have to have that, right? So you can keep everything at scale. Maybe you do have, you can keep everything at scale, basically.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to say it's the end of passive aggressiveness, but it certainly deals a death blow to it, right? Because if I ask you and I
Right.
give you a chance and you come in and weigh in, everybody who participates in a CrowdSmart, every contributor can see their own influence score.
Right.
So
Right.
you can see that people aren't kind of picking up what you're putting down, or you can see that you're really resonating,
Right.
but you got heard,
Right.
you weighed in.
Right.
And as one of the guys at Bain was telling me, one of their partners, look, even if your idea or your feedback about the deal or your feedback about the proposal on the DAO doesn't become one of the top 5 kind of most resonant, most relevant ideas, you played an important role in winnowing out the things that weren't appropriate.
Right.
So I think circling back to what we started talking about regarding engagement is a challenge that everybody has in communities, in companies, in DAOs. And the way to build engagement is to give people an authentic role to play in the process.
Right.
And then, I wouldn't say peace reigns throughout the land, because a lot of times things don't go the way somebody wants, but we hear all the time, hey, look, I wouldn't have voted for that. I wouldn't have thought that was the answer, but I understand how we came to this conclusion.
Right.
And so I'm good.
Right.
Like, I got my chance.
Right.
Didn't go the way I wanted.
Right.
But I got my chance to weigh in. And
Right.
when, the reason this is so monumental to DAOs, and the reason I think DAOs are, despite the kind of murkiness and regulation and all that stuff, the reason I think this is a really important concept that's here to stay is that it's tapping into that fundamental interest in contributing and being heard and being seen and being part of the solution.
Right.
And that's a fundamental human need.
Yeah.
And I think what DAOs really represent is, some of the best of utilization of blockchain to create these structured environments that people can trust, where they
100%.
realize that things have been recorded.
Right.
And, we're not, from a strategy standpoint, we're not trying to become this, comprehensive platform. We're really focused on interoperability, working with other DAO tooling technologies, or, integrating with Discord, integrating with other DAO platforms, because our whole point in this is we're the technology that helps people reason together to come to conclusions that they can support, to create less angst, less frustration, less passive aggressiveness, and more of a sense of inclusiveness and of being able to be a co-creator of an investment decision, a real estate decision, an impact decision,
Right.
a proposal about whether we should do this or that with the I'm in. You can, you've given me a chance to engage.
Right.
And I learned
Let me,
something from other people, right? I
yeah.
learned from engaging with other people's reasons. It broadens my perspective.
Right. I do know it's late on your side, but I also wanted to ask about actually your recent round. I know you're still fundraising, but you actually received some investment from Joi Ito and Liz Kang,
Right.
their Good Morning Japan fund, and also there's been a lot of conversations about Japan, and
Right.
actually with DAOs, and I just kind of wanted for you to kind of share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we're really excited about this investment and about our relationship with GMJP's other portfolio companies in Japan.
Okay.
There is a really exciting movement going on with Prime Minister Kishida's embracing Web3, really in contrast to some other countries where there's less enthusiastic support. But there's a strong belief here that there is an opportunity to uplift and build more growth in the Japanese economy
Right.
by encouraging the proliferation of DAOs.
Hmm.
And we're very much excited to be a part of that by providing this proof of reasoning that I was talking about that we think will be an important part of future regulations as their regulatory bodies are coming together to say, how can we solve two problems? How can we
Hmm.
encourage these DAOs to create? How can we protect the Japanese consumer, protect the Japanese investor,
Hmm.
and make these, what are the terms of governance that should be important to every DAO?
Hmm.
And as I mentioned previously, Japan is wrestling with low birth rates and increasing reurbanization, and there's an interest in how DAOs can bring people together from cities and in the countryside to uplift the economy with this kind of fluidity of contribution and labor and benefit so that the economic benefits can flow more evenly
Right.
through the country. So I think it's a great model. I think he's calling it Cool Japan. You and I
Yes.
were talking about how when we were kids, things that were made in Japan were inherently cool. I remember my Sony Walkman. Now I'm really dating myself, but um, there's a real interest in bringing that cachet back to Japan and ensuring that they don't lose their best entrepreneurs to Singapore or to other Asian countries, to Hong Kong,
Right.
right? How do they keep them there? And I think creating a more positive environment, and also really importantly, a well-regulated environment, a
Hmm.
thoughtfully regulated environment. As you know, Japan opened up early into crypto, and then there were some issues, and they
Yes.
really pulled in the oars and really tightened up. And now they're looking for that balance on how they can encourage, all of the best parts of this new economic growth engine
Okay.
while still being careful. And so
Got it.
we're excited about it because we are providing CrowdSmart to DAOs to help them provide this, more democratic type of reasoning process that helps them
Okay.
build stronger DAOs.
Right.
And what we're hearing from the communities that we're working with in Japan, and we're working with Deloitte and some other large integrators there who are trying to help advance this, both
Okay.
with corporations and with DAOs. Everybody agrees that the governance is really important
Hmm.
to make it work on all counts.
This is interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
And so
it's
they're
a
okay.
big deal.
It is interesting. And when are you going to go to Japan? Are you going to go to Japan anytime soon?
We are going to open up our Japanese office within the next, I think, 60 days
Okay.
because it's part of our agreement with some of our partners there to be there.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we're working with one of them to localize the software into Japanese, which is another part of the initiative.
Yeah, that's great.
So
Yeah.
we think it's an exciting opportunity. We're excited about having Joey and Lewis and the GMJP investment. And we're looking for other opportunities to add. The U.S. market has been somewhat challenging, as
Mm,
everybody knows, with let's call it the winter. I hate
sure.
everybody calls everything a winter, but we've certainly seen a lot of excitement from international investors, and there is some room in that round to join in with GMJP. So that's what we're working on filling in right now.
Yeah, let me know when you are there, or when you
Yeah.
plan to be there.
Well,
Yeah, I'd
we
love
were
to
just
kind of
there.
intersect.
Yeah, we were just there a few months ago. Our
Okay.
founders have been going over quite a bit.
Okay.
Um, I've been launching States, as I said, like VC3.
That's right. That's right.
I'm gonna have to hit you up for Constellation.
We do. We need to talk about that.
Yeah.
But this is super interesting. I think so I've spent a lot of time in Japan growing up.
Yeah.
So I studied Japanese in college, and I've been going there for years now. And I think it's super interesting there. I think there's a lot of. It's interesting how there was that winter in the West, and now I think Hong Kong is actually grabbing the bull by the horns, and at least on the regulatory bit, and saying we're supporting Web3. Japan is doing it as well. I don't know
Right.
if Korea is doing necessarily the same thing. My cousin's in Singapore, and they're trying to be as supportive as possible,
Right. Yeah.
even though they're a bit strict. And you have some Singaporean experience as well.
Yes, for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, so perhaps the growth of I think Web3 will at least be here for the next couple months.
Singapore is nothing if not pro-business,
Hmm.
and I think they're very thoughtful. I describe them as the platinum bear trap, right? Very smart, very thoughtful, and does not enjoy being in second place, right?
Right.
So I think you can count on them to have continued leadership there. And I think what's going on in Japan is it shows a lot of foresight, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you unleash the power of crowds in DAOs,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the gig economy, like the Uber and Lyft kind of, Upwork kind of gig
Yeah.
economy. This is yet another permutation
Right.
of people getting into these granularizations of work and having an identity about this is my skill set. I'm bringing
Right.
it to the company. I'm going to be here for as long as it serves me. And then I'm going to go take me and my skill set over here,
Right.
me and my credentials, me and my
Right.
tokens, me and
Sure.
my experience. And when those groups come together in these DAOs, man, there is a lot of knowledge
Right.
that if you can tap into it,
Right.
can achieve these impact
Right.
or whatever they're going after. If it's building $1 billion treasury, that's it. If it's solving homelessness, if it's having a city raise additional money and then having the citizens decide which park to put it into,
Right.
it's that.
Yeah, it's I think maybe the best thing to come out of I think Japan's kind of push into DAOs is at least a clear regulatory framework on how things are treated, right? So I think
Yeah.
in terms of the tooling, I think in terms of the interaction, I don't think that probably requires that, but it's probably like how are they going to be structured, right? Is it a different structure or is it an LLC? And then I think the tokens on top, right? What does that look like? I don't know. Do you have any insights on that actually?
I don't know if I should disclose what I know, or that
Oh,
appropriate, but I
pray
also
tell.
no,
Again,
I don't.
I can ask the questions. You can
No,
just
I should. What
nod,
let me put it. Let me
blink
be
one
more accurate
eye.
about that. Before I say like I'm in the know, what I should say is I would hesitate to speculate because
Right.
they're working on it right now,
Yeah. Okay.
and I think that they're being really thoughtful about it. I think what's exciting is they are taking it up,
Right.
right? And what those of us who aspire to provide DAO tooling in the Japanese market are
Mm.
excited about is the opportunity to engage with a regulatory body that is being thoughtful about it, and is asking all the right questions,
Mm.
right? Is taking the right balance of protectiveness because that's their job, right? To
Yes.
protect
Exactly.
and
Yep.
protect the investors, and also recognizes, I think, the inherent power of the people to come together and drive economic value. And because they want to unleash that, I think there is an important role for not only us, but the other DAO tooling companies to
Mm.
help them be able to understand what does a qualified DAO look like that should
Mm.
get these privileges in these markets.
Mm.
What proofs do we want to ask them to provide that are evidence of good governance?
Right.
And I imagine, there are some people coming together now in consortia. Richard and I just recently joined one about this, trying to put the DAO tooling voices together
Mm.
to say, here's what reasonable governance might look like. Here's what
Mm.
reasonable security might look like. Here are some minimum standards that it would make it a lot easier if they were some sort of international consistency.
Mm.
Probably
Mm.
too much to hope for, but at least you can put your voice out
recommendations on what those minimum standards might be. You can imagine maybe you could
a
get
DAO rating where you meet this threshold, so you can execute with this type of token for fiat, right?
Right,
Okay,
right.
you meet this standard. Okay, maybe you've got a little bit more room
Mm,
so that you can give an inexpensive, it should not cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Right.
You can provide an inexpensive threshold of a minimum standard against which you can operate in the sandbox, right? But you can get going.
Right.
And then as you meet additional criteria of good governance and good security and proofs that meet all these different, not a long list, but an important short list of standards, then maybe you've got more freedom to operate.
Right.
It seems like that's a logical, I will come back. It's like a bond rating, right? How can you provide a rating system on DAOs that helps people understand how close to the Wild West frontier they are?
Right.
Or how, is it Coinbase, right? Like,
Right.
How serious are they? How intensely focused are they on best practices? That seems like a reasonable way to sort of foster the groundswell and also reward and provide more room to run for the ones that are meeting higher standards.
This is cool. This is cool. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And again,
Like I said, it's speculative, right? Because it is a process in motion, and I am by no means on the inner circle. I'm just there saying, how can we help, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, anytime you are in their circle or you're starting to become in the inner circle, please remember the show and share all the secrets.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that, right? I'm just saying that these are, let me put it this way, these are suggestions we are making.
Right.
They are not the same thing as what they are undertaking.
Right.
I'm just impressed with the questions that everybody's asking.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for jumping on the show.
Thank you. It was really great to see you. And next time I will wear my hat.
Or your Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, or my Hawaiian shirt. I keep encouraging them to do it in Puerto Rico again.
I think that's a fantastic place.